have a very special guest for you tonight.
Hello, we've been expecting you.
This is not a test. Your government and corporate overlords have implemented new measures for your own health and safety. We are just following orders.
Everything is going to be fine.
I'd like to introduce...
Welcome everyone to another If by Whiskey. Jake, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm waiting for this rain to stop so I can get out back on the motorcycle. It's supposed to be nice the rest of the week.
Yeah, I heard you went riding over the weekend or earlier this week.
And I ride every chance I get as soon as the clouds stop. And I'm up in Washington this week, so it's been hit and miss. But after today, we're supposed to have, it's going to be like mid 60s, so it's not going to be hot, but it's not going to be raining. So that's a win. I'll take it.
Very cool. Well, you're a little bit of a risk taker, a little two-wheel riding, Evel Knievel riding shotgun, limousine riding son of a gun or something. we got ourselves our own very big risk taker who reached out to me through LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm real excited. So do we want to start about that, or do you have something we want to talk about before we bring this gentleman up?
I just was going to ask you, did you see the new Clint Russell episode from a couple days ago?
I did. Yes, sir.
I was watching. I got a few minutes left, but I've gotten the gist of it today. He went pretty hard on the 11 missing scientist thing.
We're up to 11. It was 9 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, starts kind of connecting some dots, and I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, well, there's...
Redact is on it. How many other people are on this? You know what I mean? 9, 10, 11. Like 9, 10, 11 went real quick. And then they bring back the original, right? The one woman's like, basically, they told me they were going to do it, and all that.
Yeah, no,
we should definitely talk about that.
That was intense. And then the other thing I watched was James Lee's episode about Butler.
I just watched that as well. And I don't disagree. I remember saying that the first thing going, but with the person dying, it's weird. You know what I mean? It makes it real tough. And like, how do you barely miss with a guy who wasn't a great shot? Like, let's be honest, the kid probably wasn't a great shot unless there's another shooter.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm not like all in, but I listened to Tim Dillon talk about it a week and a half ago, and I'm listening to James. It's like popping up in more places now, and I'm like,
right,
man. So at first I thought maybe there was like a specific blue and white group of people after that did that, but now I'm wondering if it just the whole thing was a big old fat psyop. So
it's interesting, and I definitely do want to talk about that, but we have a thrill seeker, a gentleman down here below. We're going to bring him up. His name, he first of all, he's executive director of the Giraffe Heroes Project, which is real interesting. Really looking forward to him talking. And we lost Jake for a second, but he'll come back. But he also he's the author of Quest, Risk, Adventure, and the Search for Meaning. I would like to personally welcome John Graham to the stage. Sir, welcome to If by Whiskey, sir.
I'm glad to be here, and I absolutely love the title of your podcast. I have no idea what you guys are doing, but you don't seem to have a glass in your hand, so maybe it'll be okay.
Maybe. We try.
I'm missing the opportunity. I'm on the West Coast, and it just turned 5 o'clock, but I'm on dad duty tonight. My daughter's here, so I'll wait till about 7.
Yeah, let's quit at 6 so I can fix myself a nice martini, and then we can go. Yeah.
No argument there.
Shaking that. So John, you reached out to me, and when you reached out, you just have a story. A story that's long, wide, deep, and I don't even know where to start. And I didn't want to get too deep into it before meeting you, because I want to learn the story as you can share it to me fresh. And I will be getting your book once we talk. It's been a pretty busy couple weeks here, but
welcome to your friends too. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and where you like to go, and we can certainly go from there.
Well, my bumper sticker is I'm lucky to be alive. At the time I was 40, I'd almost died of violent death. I don't know, a dozen times or so. And for the whole first part of my life, I was, for want of a better word, an adrenaline junkie. And I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, which one does not normally think of as a hotbed of adventurism and risk-taking and all that. And it wasn't. a very ordinary but loving family, a very ordinary community. And I was expected to go to the University of Washington, marry the girl next door, and have kids and then die, that sort of thing. But the thing happened that just around my 17th birthday, it's a long story, but I won't tell all of it. I got a job as working on a freighter, a big cargo ship. This is before, container ships. And I was headed for the Far East. And those cargo ships in those days were run by 50 or 60 really tough guys with muscles and tattoos and stuff. And I looked at these guys coming from Tacoma, Washington, where nothing ever happened and where I despaired that I would ever learn to be a man, because everybody in my life, including my dear father, was kind of like a nebbish. I mean, he got pushed around at work and in the community and stuff. And I was bullied in high school. And I was kind of desperate, like, oh my, I gotta, what's going on? This is a terrible teenage time. And so I got this job on this freighter, and these 50 or 60 guys took one look at me and said, oh man, this kid, he knows like nothing. We're going to give him some life lessons. And we'll never forget him. And this being a family station, I won't tell you what all those life lessons were, but you can imagine. And they did. I mean, it opened my eyes. I mean, the very first night I was on the deck of this freighter, and it pointed toward Japan in the Pacific Ocean. A guy comes up to me and starts making, sexual advances. Another guy comes up to him and grabs him by the throat, slams him against the bulkhead, and then starts cussing in a totally magnificent way. Beats the shit out of the guy, throws him down to the deck. And I sat there watching this because I'd never seen violence before. I'd never heard cussing like that before either. And I realized that this guy, he was in the engine room. He was about a 250 or 60 pound black guy. He was my hero. I mean, that's what real men were supposed to do. Oh, now I get it. I went down to my room in the cabin and I practiced beating up people in front of the mirror and trying to cuss like Roy. His name was Roy. And that was the beginning.
It's like Taxi Driver. You looking at me? You looking at me? You talking to me?
You looking at me? Exactly. And the rest of that summer.
But before that, even right? It's like this is how you emulated this. You almost acted like you faked it till you made it, like to show that it's interesting how you.
Well, I mean, I was skinny and bullied, and all of a sudden I was with these really manly guys who were engaged in a whole lot of adventures and risk taking and violence, and it was an eye opener for me. And the whole summer out in running around the Far East on this freighter jungles and small ports and stuff, it was magnificent.
Well, I got to tell you,
the thing is, it changed my life. That's what I want to say. I'm trying to answer your question, but it changed my life. All of a sudden, I could see that this is what life is all about. That this is how a man should act. This is what I want to be. And I didn't stop. I mean, 2 years later, I was hitchhiking in Europe, and I was in a youth hostel in Switzerland, and I see a newspaper, and it has a story about a war going on in a place called Algeria, where the rebels were fighting the French colonial government. And I said to myself, well, hell, I'd never been in a war before. Let's go down and take a look at that. So I hitchhiked down to Morocco and crossed the border into Algeria. There's a war going on, so there's nobody at the border. But at least I'm smart enough so that I have an American flag stapled to my shirt, because that will keep me from getting shot as a Frenchman in the middle of this colonial war. And I didn't even worry. I mean, the rebels loved me. I mean, they would stop cars going in my direction at gunpoint, tell the driver to take me where I wanted to go. And I was, these first adventures were the beginning of a life of adventure. And because I kept walking away from them all without a scratch, I assumed that I was invulnerable. So each adventure became more difficult, more dangerous than the one before. And in terms of, my heroes on stage and screen were people like John Wayne. And the books I read were all about tough-ass adventurers. And I rode crew at Harvard, so I put on 30 pounds of muscle, and I was 6.5 feet tall, so nobody messed with me. Didn't have to worry about bullies anymore. And so that's how my life became, and I got intoxicated with it, just intoxicated, and I had to keep it
I
going.
have a question, if I may. If I may, did you have
Yeah,
any
please, no.
siblings?
Huh?
Because you speak of your father as a mild-mannered gentleman, and as great of a man as he sounds, he certainly isn't what you wanted to emulate as a person, as a human out in the world. So, did you have any siblings, and how were their demeanors? How were their personalities?
Uh,
Is it more biological versus like
Well, I
nurture?
had an older sister, and in those years, in the mid 50s, I mean, men and women, males and females, grew up quite differently. If any of you know, was with siblings of the opposite gender, so there wasn't much communication there with my older sister. Instead, what communicated to me was these damn bullies, and my intense misery at being pushed around. um,
And what age did that start? And what age did you have that? Would it snap for you? Did it actually like spar
Yeah.
to stand
Oh,
up
I
to
suppose
that?
when one starts getting bullied when, I don't know, 11, 12 years old, I guess, middle school, high school.
Sure.
And the breaking point for me was that, excuse me, that fight on the ship, uh, uh, and meeting Roy, this tough guy from the ship. I mean, that changed my life. And the next 10 years was nothing but these wild ass adventures. But I couldn't pay for it because I wasn't independently wealthy. So I got a job. I joined the U.S. Foreign Service, and I told them I didn't really want to go to embassies in France or England and wear suits and fancy clothes. I wanted adventures, and they didn't disappoint. So I became an expert in political military affairs, and I found myself, for example, very soon in the Foreign Service in the middle of the revolution in Libya when Gaddafi came to power. I mean, we're talking way back when, 1969.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was in the embassy in Tripoli, and everybody else at the embassy was freaking out the first time they saw cars burning in the public square or rock throwing mobs. But I loved it. I just absolutely loved it.
Did you meet Gaddafi in this fight on
Oh,
his
yeah.
side or
Yeah,
what?
in fact, he and I were born in the same month, and part of my job was
Oh
to
my
find out
God.
who the hell he was. So I did a lot of biographic sleuthing, and because I was a political military officer type, I had a lot of contacts in the Libyan military, and so I knew a lot of the young coup plotters who were all my age. So no, I mean, we weren't best buddies, but I mean, and I didn't speak Arabic. But yeah, he and his crowd were just they were a bunch of young rebels, and they had a good cause too, because the country was run by a corrupt old king who was taking all the new oil wealth in Libya and giving it to his cronies and letting the people go to hell. And Gaddafi and his friends thought that was really bad, and so they determined to get rid of him. And in one night, they did.
Yeah, I
Actually,
started looking through a lot of Gaddafi's like recent speeches recently and how he's prophesized what's going on in the Middle East now, and obviously what happened to him and how that unfolded. I just interesting having a perspective from you, knowing him as a man, and that in early times is fascinating to me.
well, he's dead, of course. I mean, he
Right, right. Yeah.
we got him killed. But
Yep.
yeah,
We propped him up. We prop him up until we don't prop him up anymore.
Yeah, like that. I should also add, just as a bit, just to complete the backstory, that while all this stuff was going on, and wars and revolutions, I was also a mountain climber and did some pretty tough things. I was with a team that made the first direct descent of the north wall of Mount McKinley, Denali, for example. And it's a climb that was so difficult, so friggin' dangerous, that nobody had succeeded in doing it, and anyone had tried had been killed. But I went up there with 6 other guys, and we did it, and it was incredibly dangerous. I did a lot of other climbing as well. I've got some street creds, or mountain creds, I guess,
Well,
as a climber.
being
What I'm saying is that my life was a life of adventure in 2 ways. One, in the Foreign Service, dodging bullets and bombs, and the other, climbing really difficult and dangerous mountains where there was a constant danger of being hit with an avalanche or falling into a crevasse or something like that.
Being from Tacoma, did you ever climb Rainier? Because I live out in Buckley, so I'm in Pierce County.
Oh, well. Oh, yeah. I
myself.
climbed right here. I don't know, 4 or 5 times.
Oh, that's amazing. It's like right out my window.
Is it? Well, yeah. You should climb it. It's not that hard. You just have to be in reasonably good shape and get a good day of weather. You can climb it if you're in decent shape. Yeah.
Is round a good shape? Because that
Oh, you mean you? I don't know. I don't know what physical shape you're in, Mark. But it's tough. I mean, it's hard work getting to the top, but it's a great climb because there are sections of there's an easy route up it from a place called Camp Muir that almost everybody takes. And
Yep. I'm very familiar. I've been up to Camp Muir.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, the thing is,
Derek did ask something really quickly about Libya. I think he was there when the uprising happened, in the 60s, correct? 60s, 70s, early 70s. So it would have been before the bombing in Libya.
Oh, yeah. I was there in '69 when Gaddafi came to power.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll let you go back to the mountain stuff. I just wanted to address because Derek's been following us for a while now, and he's on the show. And whenever he puts something up, we're trying to get to know Derek better. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in any case, I mean, it just continued with me. And because I got out of Libya, the State Department really liked me a lot because I was big and tough and didn't get myself killed. So I told them, send me the most difficult, dangerous assignment you got in the war in Vietnam. I said that. And they said, well, okay, we'll do that. And I ended up as the advisor to the city of Hue. Hue, some of your viewers may remember, was the site of the Tet Massacre.
Yeah.
1968. And I was there in 70. I got there in 71, and I was the advisor to the city, but mostly I was a political officer, which meant that I was doing a lot of intelligence and counterintelligence stuff, nasty stuff. And it was all incredibly dangerous. And I was there for a year and a half. And Hue was only 50 miles south of the then DMZ, the demarcation line that then divided the North and the South. So, like I say, it was incredibly dangerous, and especially when the North Vietnamese attacked in 1972, the so-called Easter Offensive. They tried to overrun the whole country, and they didn't succeed, but they almost did. 3 years later, of course, they came back and finished the job. But in any case, I found myself trapped in that city in the middle of a battle of this Easter Offensive, and to
clarify, you're talking about the actual Tet Offensive?
No, I'm talking about something that happened 3 years later.
Okay.
Something called the Easter Offensive, where the city was almost overrun again by the North Vietnamese. And because American troops had been withdrawn from that part of Vietnam under the troop withdrawal agreements that Nixon had negotiated, it was just me and 3 or 4 other civilians in the city. And the South Vietnamese army was really inept, and they had pretty much broken and run. And I was responsible not only for a city of 250,000 people, but for a couple 100,000 other people, refugees streaming south from the battles just north. Then the North Vietnamese came within 6 miles of capturing the city. And that would have been the end of me, probably, although I don't know what would have happened. Because even if the army could send a helicopter to pull me out, everybody else, all my counterparts, would be trying to get on that chopper too, and I'd have to shoot them off the skids. So it was a pretty bad situation. Luckily, the skies cleared, and American fighter bombers from carriers off the coast obliterated the attacking North Vietnamese divisions, and my life was once again saved. But the thing that happened, and the reason why I spend so much time in my memoir talking about this, is that it was another real turning point in my life, because at the middle of this battle, here I am, I look like I'm going to get captured or killed, and the scene around me is like the artillery is booming, refugees are fleeing, looters have burned the marketplace, so there's a pall of heavy black smoke over the city, and people are screaming. It's like a scene from Kafka. I mean, it was like unbelievable. But it suddenly occurred to me in the middle of this mayhem, the chaos, that my home was 7,000 miles away. I didn't give a damn about the war. I don't even think I really cared that much about who won. I was only there for the adventure, the adrenaline rush, and now I wasn't a kid anymore. I wasn't an adrenaline-soaked teenager. I was responsible for other people's lives, and I didn't really give a damn. I knew the war was wrong. I knew the war was stupid, and I knew the war was lost. And still, I stayed there just because of the thrill of being in a kill or be killed situation. And it suddenly occurred to me at the height of this battle how friggin' shallow my life had become, and what a monster I had become. I'd become a hired killer, a mercenary. And it suddenly occurred to me that I couldn't keep living my life that way. So it was really,
how old
Yeah,
were you
I
at
mean,
this
there's a
time?
causality there. The increase of your daredevilness or whatever with the people who care about you while you're seeking this higher thing, you hurt the people around you as well as they care about you or whatever, and you could even put them in harm's way with your actions, right? As well, you're starting to reflect in
well, I
hindsight on all
started to
these things,
reflect, and
right?
to answer Jake's question, I was 29 years old. So like I say, I wasn't a kid. I should have known better, but I didn't. And so, luckily, when the American fighter bombers blasted the North Vietnamese and my life was once again spared, the State Department sent me to California, mostly to work off what we would now call PTSD. I mean, I would walk on the shadow sides of the streets in Palo Alto to avoid sniper fire. But mostly the thing is to deal with the shallowness in my own soul that I had discovered, and to try to reorient my life, because all of a sudden I realized I could not live the rest of my life like this. Even if I kept surviving all these violent adventures, even if none of them finally caught up with me, it was still no way to live a life without a heart, without a sense of community, without compassion, without giving a damn about other people. I couldn't live my life that way.
So what did you do to change that? I mean, I'm curious. Maybe you'll get into this, but did you ever get married and have children, or was there a point where?
I had a first marriage, and you can imagine, I really wasn't much of a husband or a father because I was so incredibly consumed by my adventuring. First marriage lasted a while, but it was a natural consequence, I guess, of the changes in my life. So I was when I got to California, I had a failed marriage. I had a realization that I had become a monster, and that violent adventures were no way to live my life. I had to find something more. And to answer your question, in California in those days, there was something called encounter groups. And they were where you got together with 12, 15, 18 other people, and you spilled your guts in the hope of getting some advice, and building some trust, and other people might give you some insights into your life, and it might help you out. A lot of people thought it was foolish, but not for me. It turned out that it was incredibly important. And I was in a room full of men, and I was trying to impress them that I was John Wayne. And I told them all my adventure stories, and they didn't seem very impressed. They kept telling me, yeah, we get that you're John Wayne, but that's not the point. What you're missing, and you're way too old, you should have discovered this a long time ago, is that you have a heart. It's kind of like, John, you have taken a piece of plywood and nailed it over your heart and tried to live your life that way. And you got to rip that piece of plywood off, because inside there's someone that the rest of us might even like to get to know. Someone with a heart, someone with compassion, someone who can take his skills and do good in the world, work for peace and justice instead of the opposite. I thought they were crazy, and I got really angry. But then it hit me that these guys were right. They were absolutely right. And I remember running out of this retreat house, this cabin in the Santa Cruz Mountains south of San Francisco. And I just ran down the trail and just sat down. I think I wept for about half an hour as I suddenly began to realize that now I had a path as to how to change my life, but I didn't think I could do it. My life had become so shallow. But I tried.
It's very interesting you say this, John. It's just we're looking at this country getting split in two almost, right?
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people are like, they don't live it like you lived it. You actually lived this life. So I can imagine how hardwired and how much foundational all your perceptions and beliefs are, because you live what you were saying. These people just talk and they can't even get the cognitive dissonance to break out of this. For you to have that epiphany, you must have been either right at the edge of your life, or that shift must have been so palpable at that moment for you to even start
Well,
realizing
it was friggin' difficult. I mean, you're right. I was thoroughly embedded as this adventure mercenary type person. And now all of a sudden I'd come to the realization that these guys in this encounter group had the guts to tell me to my face that was no way to live a life, and that there was a heart in there, and I shouldn't give up on trying to find it. And so I didn't give up, but it was 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. I fought to reorient my life, and it was the most miserable time of my life because I kept making mistakes. But I learned to play with my kids, for example. I learned to develop collegial relationships at work. I learned to actually make some friends and to be in community with other people. And then the State Department, in their wisdom, although I don't think they did it on purpose, sent me to the United Nations. It was the perfect place because the United Nations has got all these nations there, and 2/3 of them in the what's so-called third world, the poor sections of the planet. Billions of people were living lives of quiet desperation, black and brown people who were starving, suffering from disease, violence, all the rest of it. I don't need to tell you. And I got shoved right in the middle of it. But now my life had really begun to change, and I saw myself as an engine of good as much as I saw myself as an engine of adventure only 6-7 years before. And so I fought, and I took enormous risks, but they weren't physical risks so much as they were the risks of getting fired or even jailed by going way beyond the parameters of my job and fighting hard for peace and justice for the poorer peoples of the planet. I'm proud to say, very proud to say, that during that time I played a key role in helping end apartheid in South Africa. I mean, I did stuff like that, which was very risky in terms of like I say, thrown in jail or accused of treason or whatever. But I fought hard, and to the point where I realized I couldn't stay in the State Department because the State Department, even under a nice guy like Jimmy Carter, the State Department wasn't moving nearly fast enough for me. I mean, by then, man, I was an engine of change, and nothing was going to stop me. So I quit. And,
think about Jimmy Carter's administration. It really kicked off the thing that we're starting to back into now with Iran. I mean, the whole Middle East thing, the petrodollar coming out of Nixon into Carter, that whole thing changed the whole way we did things in the Middle East. I mean, so I can only imagine where your whole life has been this thing to push that, I don't want to say agenda, but that thing that you supported, and now you're reflecting on it from a different
my whole
angle.
life was about
beautiful.
real, what they call, Henry Kissinger loved to call it realpolitik. Just nothing but the tough guy stuff. There was no room for compassion, no room for a heart. And to hell with all these starving people in Africa and Asia. What was important was beating the Soviet Union in the Cold War. That's the only thing that mattered. And I began to see that as evil, as not a way that America should act. That's another reason why I quit.
Well, it seems fascinating too that you're doing this over this number of years. So it had to have spanned multiple administrations. So you're working for different, under different presidents and different parties, whatever you want to call it. But it seemed like you had a pretty solid through line on what your mission was, regardless of kind of who was in power in our own country.
Yes, that's true. But basically it so happened that I quit just as Ronald Reagan became president, because it was very apparent that he was going to fire my ass or put me in exile someplace where I'd never be seen or heard from again. So working for Ronald Reagan was the last straw, and I wasn't going to do that. So I quit. And it's at that moment that the Giraffe Project comes into my life. And we can, if you want to go there, we can go there now. Or if you got more questions.
That's a perfect segue.
That's perfect.
That's a perfect segue. So you're coming out of this thing. You leave the government institutional portion of it, the state part. Jake and I are borderline anarchists, John. We're personal responsibility people. We're very about accountability, but we aren't to this thing. The state, we don't find the state creates a lot of the problems. Yeah. So we're kind of in that alignment. But I was a neocon going in through Iraq and Afghanistan. So I wasn't 40 until I broke. You're here at 29 and you were actually doing it. So I can't even, I mean, it's amazing how you came to that. So yeah, tell us about how this Giraffe Heroes Project came to be at this point of your life.
Yeah, so I'm at the United Nations. I'm beginning to think that I have found my new life. Helping end apartheid, I felt really good about that. I did lots of other good things I won't go into, but I had become an engine for peace and justice issues. And then I left the United Nations, and I still didn't have any money. So I panicked over the lack of money. And a friend says, "Well, you can always make money lecturing on cruise ships. You've always had a good, gift of gab. Get up and give a speech or two, and they pay you an absurd amount of money." So I said, "Oh, really?" And it's true. The very first try, I got a job as a ship's lecturer on a cruise ship called the Prinsendam. Now, in those days, this was 1980, cruise ships were little. I mean, like 500 or 600 people, not 5,000. But nonetheless, I was hired as a ship's lecturer, and I got to go on this cruise ship headed for the Far East and back. And I got to take my then 13-year-old daughter, Mallory, with me. And so I prepared to give a couple of stupid lectures on what foreign policy or whatever, and dance little old ladies around the dance floor in my tuxedo. And then the third night out from Vancouver, the ship catches fire and starts to sink in the Gulf of Alaska, 140 miles off the Alaska coast. It was a new ship, wasn't supposed to sink, but it was on fire. And things
It was
got
the Titanic, John. The Titanic was new too. Sorry.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true too. And it's funny because I took Mallory decades later. Mallory and I went to see that movie, Titanic, and we just held each other's hands because there were so many similarities. I mean, at the height of when the ship was before they abandoned the ship, all the passengers were told to go to the stern of the ship where they served free drinks, and they brought out the ship's orchestra. Just like the Titanic, only it wasn't playing Near My God to Thee, but show tunes from Oklahoma. So Mallory and I are out there. The ship is burning, and the captain finally announces that the fire is out of control and that we have to abandon ship. Problem, there are a lot of problems, but one of the more serious problems was that, and we'd known this, of course, from the weather reports, was that a typhoon was bearing down on the ship. Typhoon Vernon, I think it was, or Victor. A typhoon was bearing down on the ship, and we had to abandon the ship on little cockle shells of lifeboats in the middle of the Gulf of Alaska, 140 miles from land. It was a pretty desperate situation. I mean, they sent out the SOS and all that, and rescue was getting organized in Alaska and in British Columbia. All kinds of people were trying hard to get to us, but still we were out there and it didn't know how long we were going to last. So they managed to get us all into lifeboats without any loss of life, which was a miracle because, like I said, a bunch of old people, right? And so slipping and falling, getting into a lifeboat was very probable, but nobody got killed. So we're in lifeboats, and they all drift away from the Prinsendam. And by dawn, a big oil tanker had answered the SOS and came within sight. And it had a big wide deck, and the helicopters from the land-based bases could pick up individual people off the lifeboats by lowering a chain with a chair on the end of it and hauling them up one at a time. And then when they had 8 or 10, they would fly them to the deck of the tanker and drop them and come back for 8 or 10 more. So they worked as fast as they can. There were 2 or 3 helicopters, 550 people. And by noon, I saw my daughter Mallory lifted off. And so at least that was a concern and met. And so the helicopters kept working. But after a time, the typhoon hit full force and the helicopters couldn't fly anymore. I mean, it's suicide to fly a helicopter in a typhoon, right? So the only chance for rescuing us, and by then we were down to 8 people, 8 guys in lifeboat number 2. And of course there were guys because when the helicopters arrived, what did we know?
Women and children first. We better play that. We better follow that rule, right?
Yeah, right. It's funny because it's very clear now. People have told me numerous times that women are much more likely to survive out in conditions like that than men are. But in any case, 8 of us are left in lifeboat number 2. Helicopters can't fly. Our only hope is Coast Guard cutters. There's a couple of them that have steamed out from Sitka, and they were trying desperately to find us, but visibility was now down to about 100 yards or less. We were dying of hypothermia. I mean, I climbed enough mountains to know what hypothermia is. It's where you get cold, but then you get warm again, and then you go to sleep and you don't wake up. So we were dying of hypothermia. We had no warm clothes. We were, of course, seasick as dogs. We could barely function. And we tried to bail, but the waves were now breaking into the little boat. And it looked like we were doomed. The thing was, it was getting dark now because this is getting on winter in the Gulf of Alaska. 5 o'clock.
And this is your this is your leisure time.
Yeah,
right?
yes,
This is not your this is not you like going into the belly of the beast. You're like, hey, I'm going to take a vacation on a cruise ship and talk for a little bit, and then this still happens.
Yeah, it still happened.
Astonishing.
But, there was a reason. There was a reason for it, why it happened. And I'm about to get there. Just give me a minute. So it looked like we were going to die. I mean, it was hard enough for a Coast Guard cutter to find us in that storm and fading daylight. But once it was dark, we had no flares, no lights. Of course, the radio didn't work. So once it was dark, we were dead because I projected that we had maybe 4 or 5 hours to live before hypothermia killed us. And all they'd find in the morning would be our corpses if we weren't thrown out of the lifeboat. So I wasn't a religious person, and I still am not. But I can remember pointing up.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do? I mean, you're finally gonna die. Your luck's gonna run out after all these other adventures, getting shot at or whatever, climbing mountains. This time, my luck was gonna run out. But I didn't understand why God, if you want to call it that, why God was doing this to me. Because after all, I helped end apartheid. I helped do a lot of. I reoriented my life to be of service, to do God's work. Good stuff. And now he was wiping me out. She was wiping me out.
He was done his use for you. You're a useful idiot, John. No, you get. I'm totally kidding.
I was a useful idiot. I mean, now I was being wiped. Anyway, I didn't like it one bit. And so I got angrier and angrier. And I began screaming at God and arguing with God. And
you got Lieutenant Dan. You were in this typhoon, Lieutenant Danning. This is Forrest Gump. This is totally Forrest Gump.
I'm telling you.
Hey, my life is a movie, man.
It's amazing. Yeah. So to the point. Yeah. So you're yelling at God now. Now you're angry.
Yeah. Now I'm angry, and God, or whatever it is, whether it was a voice in the storm, I don't know. The other 7 guys didn't hear a thing, of course, but to me it was loud and clear. And this voice says, "Stop kidding yourself. You think you've turned your life around, but the instant there's a real obstacle, i.e., you're running out of money, you panic." And now you're lecturing on cruise ships. You get off this cruise ship, you're going to lecture on another cruise ship because it's a pretty copacetic existence, isn't it? You got a choice to make. You can either return to those values you are beginning to discover at the United Nations and do some good in the world for the next 50 years, or you can die out here. It's a choice. Because
now this was like a literal burning bush moment. Like this is the wave talking.
A literal burning bush.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's talking. It literally is talking to you, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like I say, the other 7 guys didn't hear a thing. And I've had psychologists say, "Oh, it must have been the wind." Well, maybe it was. I don't know. But I heard this, and I had this argument with God.
Spiritual. I will say this, John. Spiritual experiences are direct. They're not through an intermediary. No one can tell you what you've directly experienced. No one can do that. This is just amazing.
I agree.
An amazing thing.
And this did happen. I swear it happened. And especially what happened.
Believe you 100%.
Especially what happened next. I'm beaten, right? I'm dying of the cold. I have this argument with God. God gives me this challenge. Basically, shit or get off the pot. That's what God said, basically. Although God doesn't use words like that, I guess. But anyway, that's what I heard. Should I get off the pot? So I said, okay, I agree. I agree to the deal. I'll get back on that. I'll become an engine for good for the rest of my life. I agree. In that instant, a Coast Guard cutter, the Boutwell, comes crashing through this wild storm, heading right for us. I mean, if the lookout hadn't seen us, it would have cut us in 2. I mean, the odds of that happening are what? 1 in a million. I don't know. And so I get rescued, and 8 of us are rescued. I never looked back after that. I went back to New York, got my act together, and I kept the promise. And it's at that instant, really, within a month or two, that I had met the woman who had started the Giraffe Heroes Project. Here's where I can help knit all this together for your viewers. Ann Medlock, a remarkable woman, a writer and an editor in New York City, and I kind of knew her before the ship thing. Had gotten really upset about the fact that all the news in the media of the day, not social media, but then what we would call conventional media, was focused on gloom and doom, rapes and pillage, and nobody was telling stories of all the good people doing good things. And she knew that there were all kinds of people in New York or elsewhere who were risking all kinds of things in order to help other people, but no one was telling their stories. So she decided she would do that. She would start her own news service, if you will, rivaling CBS or whatever. But you start her own news service and start telling the stories of these people. And she started with the media of the day, which was stuffing press releases into envelopes or putting them out faxes or getting a star from stage or screen, which is possible in New York, to do a voiceover and then creating little 5-6 minute segments and putting them on vinyl records. I bet half your viewers of this podcast don't even know what a vinyl record is. A piece of plastic, flat, goes round and around and the sound comes out.
John, I
still
hate to
buy
break
them.
this to you, sir. I hate to break this to you. Vinyl's actually made a comeback, sir.
Ooh,
There are no longer, you could walk into a Best Buy and you will not nary find a CD. Those little CD, the smaller, shiny ones, you won't find those, but you will find walls of vinyl record. It actually has made a comeback. It's like a nostalgic comeback.
Right.
Yeah, I buy them.
It shows how far out of it I've become.
They actually do sound better. They are sonically superior. But
I know that. Yeah, I heard that. Anyway, so she started that way, and I thought it was kind of lightweight because I was a great speaker, and so I was doing all kinds of speeches around New York City. In those years, it was mostly ban the bomb speeches because it was the middle of the Cold War and the nuclear threat was extreme. But not very many people were listening to my speeches. What was happening was that people were flocking to what Ann Medlock was doing. The New York Times did a nice story on her a year or two after she started, and that was the beginning for the Giraffe Heroes Project. And at that time, I got interested in what she was doing and began to realize that public speaking was a really minor way of changing people's minds and hearts. What changed people's behavior was storytelling, like troubadours in the Middle Ages,
Yeah.
We talk about this. The Bible is a narrative. Humans work through narrative, and when you can tell the story, you appeal to both the logic and the emotional, and you actually bring it together, and you actually get the full attention of the human through story. It's amazing how a story can just captivate and draw and inspire and all these beautiful things.
Well, you're a podcaster, so you do it for a living. You know that, and I think this goes way beyond even the Bible. It goes back to the Neanderthals dancing around their campfires. If you want if you want the people in your culture to act bravely, you don't preach at them to act bravely. You give them an example, someone already acting bravely, and that's what Ann.
It's your example. You have your gentleman. What was his name on the ship? Roy, you have your Roy, right? Everyone needs a Roy as their inspiration through story to live up to.
No. But the other thing that happened was that I fell crazy in love with Ann at about that same time. And we got married, and we have been together, Ann and I, for almost 45 years now, running the
congratulations.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a beautiful story. That's beautiful.
People said it wouldn't last, but it sure has.
I'm sure you complement each other very well, and both of you fill each other's the make the complete person. So
yes, but we fight a lot, but nonetheless, we do honor each other.
It's out of passion, though, I bet.
Well,
it's passion, not out of anger, right?
No, it's like we both have the same metaphysics, of the same outlook on life, the same philosophy of wanting to be of service in the world. And
how did it get the name of the Giraffe Heroes Project?
Oh, well, giraffe, long neck, right? And she called it the Giraffe Heroes Project because she was looking for people sticking their necks out. Yeah, that's where it came from.
I like that.
So the metaphor was giraffe, and because of the long neck, and it's grown and grown and grown. I mean, now in 2026, the Giraffe Project has honored over 2,000 what we call Giraffe Heroes, men, women, active in every issue you can think of, from women's rights to pollution to whistleblowing to medical supplies for Gaza, whatever the problem is. There are people out there bravely trying to solve it, and we find them, or the people find them for us, and we tell their stories, and as widely as we can, on not on vinyl discs anymore, but on social media. And it's had an enormous impact. I mean, it's no different than the troubadours in the Middle Ages or those Neanderthals around their campfire. We're getting the same results, and it's important. And it works. I mean, we get all kinds of feedback and people who have been moved by the Giraffe Project messages, and are willing to get off their rear ends and do something about the problem of most concern to them. We've started a program in schools. I mean, we're all over.
Could I trouble you to highlight one of the recent Giraffe Heroes that you would have, and like give us kind of an example of someone who you would highlight as someone who you'd look for or see,
well, we look for, first of all, we look for ordinary people. We tend not to honor someone who's been in the news big time for their bravery, because they don't need us. They're already being honored. We're looking for unsung heroes, people that no one would know about if it wasn't for our work. And like I say, there are 2,000. One that stuck in my head just from last week isn't an American. She's a Ugandan working in rural Uganda. Uganda is one of those places where the rights of women are slightly above those of camels. It's a very patriarchal, traditional society, especially in the jungle, the backcountry parts of Uganda. Worse than that, the tribal chiefs hold complete control, and they destroy women's rights wherever they can. Not only that, but some of your viewers may even know there's a lot of physical stuff that happens to young women, mutilation, horrible
castration and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty
all of that stuff.
Yeah,
and they're kept from having any leadership roles whatsoever. Some young women are pushing back against that, and they're taking enormous risks to do that. And the story in particular that moved me most was a young woman who waded right into it, and she issued a direct challenge to the tribal chiefs, who could easily have her killed, in her calls for the women of Uganda to rise up and tell the tribal chiefs to go take their views and stick them where the sun doesn't shine, at great risk to herself. And she educates women to their rights. For example, there is a constitution and women can vote. So educating them to their electoral rights. And then she goes to the capital city, Kampala, and has worked hard for changes in rules in the Constitution itself to give women the right, not just the right to vote, but the right to stand for office, the right to be, the women's rights, the kind of things that women fought for so hard in this country and are still fighting, I guess. But in places like Uganda, they're just starting, and it's tremendously difficult and dangerous. And this women, and there are another sort of half dozen of them, I guess, over the last couple of years. It's a good example because these are totally unsung people. People in the United States never heard of them. But you read their stories and you say, wow, how could that woman do that? I mean, every night must have been a risk, not knowing some tribal chief was going to slit her throat. And she kept fighting, and she collared the president of the country or the prime minister to insist on electoral changes and political changes, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, there are a lot of stories. That's one.
That's amazing. So we have about 10 minutes before we call it a day. Is there any topic or anything you wanted to discuss? Or Jake, did you have any specific questions? Because this has been absolutely fascinating. Because I'm going to bring you on. I've got another podcast called Knox Conscious. I'd like to delve into more of the spiritual side of this. Because I'm like you, I don't know what to explain, but I think we could have a really interesting conversation outside of that as well. So
we can, and you're right. I don't normally lead with that because for too many people it's still totally weird. But yeah, I'd be glad to do that. But the thing, I want to give Jake a chance here too, but I'll tell you to answer your question. The thing that's most important to me to leave behind as a message is, as again, it's kind of a bumper sticker, but I think there's nothing more important in any of our lives, yours, mine, anybody, than to find a life that's personally meaningful, that has purpose. That when you look at the mirror in the morning, you know you want to see that what looks back at you isn't just taking up space on the planet, but you're here for a reason.
No, I completely agree with that, and I think that that almost transcends any sort of spiritual ideology or any sort of political ideology, to really find the motivating factor for your own life and to find meaning and fulfillment is really the kind of the secret to life. And to hear you kind of explain it your way is amazing. I would like to know, have you been approached at all for anyone to try and make a movie out of some? I mean, there's so many stories here. It seems like this could easily be a 2-3 hour movie that really covers a lot.
The answer is yes. I was approached by a skilled and well-known agent in Hollywood about just before COVID hit. So that slowed the things down, but my story is being shopped as we speak in Hollywood, because other people have agreed with you that that it would make a great movie.
That's the first thing I thought of.
I wanted to add one more thing too to this business about meaning. Finding meaning isn't enough. You have to know what to do with it. Now, I thought I had found the meaning in physical adventure, and I had for damn near a decade or more. But then I discovered that was too shallow. And I've since discovered that the real meaning of life comes from giving back, from some kind of service. And I watched friends of mine who think they found meaning in amassing money or power, and for a time they have, some of them anyway. And I'm convinced from looking around, I'm now 83, that kind of meaning is still shallow, and that when the time comes they put you in a pine box, you really want to discover that the meaning for life was really meaningful, that you did make a difference, that you were on the planet. Otherwise, it's like being a Swiss watch with no hands. What's the use of it? You have to have that meaning. And the kind of meaning that makes sense is giving back, is helping solve tough political or economic problems, whether it's women's rights or economic issues or whistleblowing or whatever, political issues. That's what's important. And I also, one last thought is that I'm not saying to anybody, certainly not to my business audiences, that they should become Mother Teresa, that they should put on sackcloth and ashes. No, you can find meaning any place. A businessman, for example, that makes a good product, sells it for a fair price, good labor conditions, honors environmental conditions, is a good neighbor in the communities where he has factories or she has factories. That's a service. A barber who listens carefully to a troubled person who's getting his hair cut, that's a service, et cetera, et cetera. You can find service anywhere. You just need to look at yourself, the skills that you've got, the resources you've got, and figure out what it is you need to do to find that meaning. And I guarantee you, sooner or later, you'll find it in some kind of giving back. That's more than a bumper sticker, but anyway, yeah.
I will say that, John, I had no idea where this conversation was going to go. And when I understood your adventure and talk about meaning this morning, I woke up in a lot of pain this morning. So I was in a grumpy mood. So I already had like this not great outlook this morning. I had a little bit water glass half empty look. So I was like, this guy's going to come on here and tell us that thrill seeking's meaning. But I'm like, these adrenaline junkies, they just do it. And I started going into this thing, and here you are completely flipping the script on me, surprising me with your epiphany of you realize this when I would have assumed you wouldn't have without knowing you. And it's so refreshing that I am flipped on my head right now, because I expected this to be like just the tough guy thing, and how you found meaning through the tough guy thing, not realizing how this is what you wanted, but also realizing how you can use that. And it's like a 180-degree shift from what I thought this conversation was going to be. And I'm just so grateful for it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for hosting this podcast. It is a real service, by the way, you two guys are doing, that to have someone like me come on who brings his own controversies with him. I mean, There's a lot of podcasts that are pretty boring because they don't get into the skin, or whatever the right metaphor is.
Well, unfortunately, we only have a few more minutes, but we will delve into this deeper. I think we probably will have you on again, Jake. I mean, I think sounds like something we definitely want to have something again, because we are about pushing the pain, because we've all made mistakes. We're all culpable. So like, we want to realize where I made a mistake. Maybe you can keep me from making that by realizing it where you found it ahead of time, and so there, it is in service. We want to do this. We want to learn and educate. So I'm just grateful for the conversation. Thank you. Jake, you have any more questions before you call it? I know we got a few more minutes before we call it.
No, I mean, I didn't have any expectations at all. And to hear, I mean, listen to the story. I was imagining it like a movie, and all these different places that you've been, and in these different eras and things that you've been involved in that we've only read about or heard, things that weren't correct about or whatever. And to really kind of go back and go through this, granted it's been an hour, but I'm sure we could spend an hour on each one of those areas and those things you've experienced. And I love learning, and I love hearing people's perspectives, and I love hearing, different viewpoints on life, and finding the things that I agree with or that I connect with, and things that, I wouldn't expect that kind of come from left field. And it's been an honor to hear this story. And I hope that it getting shopped around, I hope it gets picked up. And if so, I hope they don't bastardize the story too much for Hollywood, and they keep it true to your life, because it's really fascinating.
Thank you.
I do want to address one more thing before we call it. Once again, John, if you could do us a favor, could you just tell us could we get a hold of you, or what are good websites and everything before we call it? And then I got one more question for Derek before we call it a day.
Yeah, my own website is my name, johngraham.org. We didn't even mention this, but I urge people to go up to my short form video series, which is called Badass Granddad. Badass is all one word.
Nice.
Granddad has 2 D's in the middle. They're just 3 minutes long, and you can dial them up on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. First 2 minutes is one of my adventure stories, but then I draw some life lessons that are relevant for the last minute. And it's going way beyond what I thought it would go. I mean, I got 125,000 followers already in a year.
Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations on that.
Oh, yeah.
That's
so
cool.
That's Badass Granddad.
Giraffe Project. Granddad.
Yeah. The Giraffe Heroes Project, again, it's simple. It's giraffe.org. And you mentioned already the name of the book, Quest, Risk, Adventure, and the Search for Meaning. That's enough. The rest you can put in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you, John. So, Derek, very quickly, can you send us an email, Derek, ifbywhiskeypodcast@proton.me. We'll get you in touch with Spike Cohen, youarethepower.net. I think they like to cyberbully police into doing the right things. It's a really interesting group. And actually, they're a really good group. We have Spike coming. So, John, thank you very much. Jake, anything else before we call it a day?
No, I think we nailed it. And John gets all the credit today. He brought the show home.
I'm ready for the movie, because, like, to your point, Jake, it's literally, I'm running it through my head, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. So, John, thank you again for joining us. Jake, again, as always. Everyone, this has been another If by Whiskey. Stick around, guys. On the back end, we'll just say our goodbyes, but we'll stick around. Everybody, have a great day.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this Wednesday night. This has been If by Whiskey, and we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Subscribe to If by Whiskey. Fuck Liberty Lockdown. Subscribe to this show.
No comment.